The Gatha Ustavaiti. This Gatha, consisting of yasna 43 to 46, is named from the word which begins it. Like so many other Persian and Semitic compositions, like the last three collections too. The fact that the word usta possesses special significance may have influenced the minds of the Parsis of a later age, inducing them to associate the first chapter with happy anticipations. But it was, of course, not owing to any such circumstances that the name was given to the Gatha. The Gatha, like its fellows, has its existence as a unit from the nature of its meter. It is lines generally of 11 syllables, arranged in stanzas of 5. It seemed convenient to chant all the hymns of one particular meter together. This hymn, from some unknown reason, or for pure accident, having stood first in the collection in this meter, the Gatha was named from its first word. The question naturally arises at this place whether this Gatha or its parts as a whole is older than the Ustavaiti and others. For supplementary statements on this subject, see the introduction on page 27 and elsewhere. So that would be program C of that. It is sufficient to recall here that the procedure of the Ustavaiti and the sequence of the other Gathas in the manuscripts of the Yasna have little importance in determining the question of relative age. If originally grouped in the order of their age, they might easily become transposed for the purpose of liturgical recitation. And see the inserted Haptan Ga'ete and Yasna 52 as to the meters present. They afford no indication as to relative age. The meters of the Ustavaiti, approaching, as it does, the Trishtup, may be as old or older than that of the Ustavaiti. The oldest rishis sang in Trishtup. The sole remaining text of the relative age of the pieces is their contents. Do those of the Ustavaiti show a priority to those in the Ustavaiti? Regards the particular circumstances of which they treat, so far as I am able to judge, no part of the Ustavaiti is older than Yasna 46. There we have the man before us, at a period of his life, before he had attained to his supreme position. He not only laments the unfavorable prospects of his cause, but he is full of vehement animosity, urging on his adherents to the overthrow of some powerful opposing leader, and anticipating an armed struggle so formidable that its partisans are elsewhere alluded to in Yasna 44 as hosts. We see him also as exhorting various chiefs of his party, as they are evidently standing before him in some large assembly, possibly as the army on the eve of an important encounter. We refer intimately to the monarch, to his own family, the Svitimas, and to the Hvogvas, as represented by Astra. He offers the rewards of Ahura, as he pronounces his threats and condemnations. Every feature bears the strongest evidence of originality, but we have not the same in the Gathas Ustavaiti, Spenta Ma'inu, and the others. beyond a question. Those passages which express grief, fear, and passionate resentment, we should naturally refer to Zarathustra personally and to the earlier portion of his career, and we can make no distinction between such passages when they occur in the Ahunavaite, Ustavaiti, and elsewhere, as to the chapter 29 with its logical commencement, as expressing the sufferings to be remedied in the entire effort, together with the call of Zarathustra in immediate connection in chapter 30 with its theosophical statements. We should say that they were composed later during a period of success and reflection, but this would be a mere surmise. The time of the sage need not necessarily have been consumed in struggles, even during the early years of his career. Chapter 53 seems to belong to the period of mature age, but not necessarily to a period of advanced age. It celebrates the marriage of Zarathustra's daughter, but maidens were married early, with the exception of Yasna 53:1. I would say that the occurrence of a place in this or that Gatha has little, if anything, to do with determining the question of its relative age. Now, there's a difference between married early and consummated early, and you see, before that, the things are arranged. There's the move-in, and then there's the consummation, so things can happen in that order. So, but compared to Western ways of delaying marriage, which actually doesn't end up being as good for education and stuff as people say it does, but people, I remember in high school there were married people in high school, but we go back here, okay, the progress and struggles of the cause. We are into verse 5 with the comment, and we are, that I may ponder. Or possibly, which shall not be, or which shall I be? It's the subjunctive here used to express obligation. Roth was nicht sein soll, oder was sein soll. Ne'er may be rendered as follows: tell it to me distinctly, that which is the highest gift, and which is given to me through sanctity. That is, because duty and righteousness are fulfilled by me, the best gift of thy reward is gained by this means. But how is it possible to make it actually one's own? Grant me the knowledge through the best mind, that is, declare that intelligence to me which comes through good conduct, and by which also safety is secured to me, and declare either that which is not, or that which is, O great wise one. And before 6, an interval of silence seems here to intervene. Our lost verses leave an unexplained transition. The sage turns again to the people. Now, people get his feeling with the Quran too, but it turns out not to be broken. It's an evocative text. You respond to it as you're going along, you could say, in parts, or at least you can kind of respond to the whole thing. Va'okat will declare, according to Barth, the Pahlavi of around shall flourish has harmazd avand ku dayi kand den valman vakshed vohu man o. And the Parsi manuscript for towards the end there, Its Holiness and Glory, has as follows: U hast buland ke an man agahiha gui askara mansar e tamam raftani, ku tamam pada isan pa ra e mansar baz an hawesi e hormuzd rased ke pa sawab darad bi marg raftani azas hormuzd hudai kand andar u afzayed bahman kus pad is ahi pahtan e mard kandi hormuzd pahtan mehman. And so we go later in the verse, the glorious, he's through. So this is why some of the parentheses that we shared with that. Munas avo roshani gamikto kavari havathra and kavari. Oh, havathra and kavari can hardly mean comfortable here. Ease is in the later sense. And every hour the same. Ra o kebis certainly means with illuminating objects, stars, or shining lights. Wait, that's further up. Clothed in the stars. Oh, okay, yeah, that's it. And before that, we're the glorious. And the note around the crater, we have Hoochman der Schopfer des Asha. Oh, it's just referring to another book. And towards the end of the book, towards the end of the verse, thou who art for every hour the same, pavan minavadike vak shined moon kavanik ham kudai. And there's a frequent expression. 8 verse 8 refers us to the frequent expression. Spentem at the va manhi in chapter 43. And Roth at the first has vor nehemsten, and later in verse 8, when I beheld thee, when I seized thee, took thee in, with my eye, the Pahlavi, Amatam Pavan, Hamkash mi, Avo Ham Vakdund Homane. And we have, this chair is squeaking. Okay, the actions of life. The end of the verse here. Den ahvano pavan kunisno kudai hamane. The Lord of the actions of life. Okay. Nadio sang may be rendered as follows. Thus thou wert thought at the first by me, O great wise one, the Lord, when thou wert engaged in the production of Gavahmana, heaven, right? In which production they apprehend the Father of the best mind, when they observe him with a full-faced look, and thou art the Father of that creation, which is manifestly righteous. It's metaphorical language, obviously. That is, thou makest the purer creation good in conduct. Thou art a king in the world, as to action, that is, where it is fitting to confer a benefit, and also where it is fitting to inflict a punishment. In each of these thou art capable. And the spirit of verse 9, his spenta ma'inu, otherwise spiritual understanding, but ma'inu is used elsewhere, verse 3 and 7, alone, and certainly not as an adjective, even with a substantive understanding. The rendering spirit as thy spirit is suspiciously significant, but what is the help? We are forced by grammar so to translate. And the ablative with the aided has the force as in ashat hakah. And she goeth, I can hardly accede to the infinitive here. Te is a rare infinitive termination in Gothic. Also the infinitive seldom fails to the end of the sentence. The Pahlavi has yatuned at present, but the Pahlavi should never be positively cited for the forms as it is free. And we can kind of think about the post-Greek stuff in the Bible. You never know when is that word even in any of the Greek manuscripts. There was further changes to the Bible after that. The Jehovah's Witnesses and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are among those that said, if it didn't happen in Greek, it's not in my Bible. We may share some of the same doctrines, but if it didn't happen in Greek, you know. And verse 10 of the two she chose, we have, observe that the cow, some would say ox, chooses her master, unlike other cattle. But observe also, which is more interesting, that she seems reconciled to the guardian appointed by Hera. And Yasna 29:9, she actually wept at the naming of the pusillanimous Zarathustra, desiring a kingly potentate. Now, however, we see that she must have dried her tears as she is satisfied with the simple workman whom he represents, notwithstanding high rank. In the latter Avesta, this verse, Vestaria Fasuyant, is declared to be Zarathustra, the thrifty toiler in the fields. And now the comment on the good mind's wealth in verse 10 there. Moon Vasui Pavan Bohu Mano. And then later in the verse, we have never shall the thieving. The Pahlavi has Dvasahak. Naryungasang has Pratarayatra. And later in the verse, we have sharing the good creed for the king's Kupo Hosh Murisni. Judges so blindness, as everywhere indicated. The wicked are kept from the sight of the truth. And it seems to be implied, for the kind's choice would bestow it. In verse 11, we mentioned the religious laws. And, well, God made the worlds and the souls, so, and the bodily life. Geidner, admirably the flesh, the Pahlavi, Tanu, Homandano, Gan, Yaha Bund. Notice that the bodily life or flesh is mentioned after understanding, where Aramaete gives a body after previous creations. Yasna 30, verse 7. The Pahlavi, the place of his placing his choices. 11 here, we have the gloss. That is, even the actions and teachings of the pious are given forth by thee, and this was also given in the wisdom of thy mind. And when there is a person in whom there is a desire for the other world, that desire is granted to him by thee. That is, what is necessary when he is arriving in the other world, this which is thus required or desired by him at that time is given by thee through that which is thy mind and wisdom. Although not able to follow the indications of the Pahlavi fully, I think that there is no question but that we have an important statement in the last line. It does not seem to me possible to render less profoundly than where the wisher may place his choices, his religious preferences and beliefs, including all moral volition. Obviously, the afterlife, you would think, would be a crystallization of, one's beliefs and practices, one's choices, rather than one just falls into circumstance. Avozak lebeman. And that's a note in 12, devoted mind and heart, and the feeble search. Okay, no, it's just a reference to another place. Steady questions. The evil as well as the good spirit is questioned. The two spirits of Yasna 33 through 6 were here inspiring the conflict. And where they dwell as in their homes, the last of the verse, the Pahlavi unbearingly in the sense of Mehano, as in, as, gas, taman, yehev, un edo. Their Yoseng has para, lokaniv, asan, and Siyasna 39, 33, 9, 34, 6, a questioning which was lightly made would indicate a willingness to tamper with error. The Persian manuscript following the Pahlavi has Angabang e Buland An e Durug Guftar Gana Minu Wa An Ham e Rast Guftar Hormuzd, etc. But Naryosang is more accurate or literal. Atra, Bumbam, Karote, Antar, Gagata, Meth Yavakta, Va Sat Yavakta, etc. Pavanzak e Ashkarako in which are open, verse 13, and are furtive, ni hanik, and on all thy glittering eyes thou seest even the questions and decisions of our thoughts, as to matters which are simple or difficult, permitted or occult. Well, I wouldn't consider permitted. Open or hidden would make more sense. Okay, sorry for the slight pause there. Thou art gazing, so the last of verse 13. I have not followed what may yet possibly be a valuable and correct hint of tradition. I render Yosang, he who asks through what is open, through righteousness, or he who acts through what is secret, through sin, or he also who through on account of a little sin which has been committed, commits the great one to secure a purification, that is, who for the sake of purification, necessary on account of a little sin which has been committed, commits a greater one, in order that the first one may not become known. Upon these two, each of them, look with thy two eyes, over sins and righteous actions. Thou art one way everywhere, and again the Lord. The concretes here may give the right indication. And we have shall come in the future from verse 14. Man mado munik yam tunendo, what is come and what is coming. Moon Avam, the debt confessions, are offered with Haka in the Indian sense, Angar Diki, the judgment, but Narengyosang has Vipakata, consummation, and okay, the final state, and completion. So Naryosang has the follows: Tad Dvitayam Dvata Prikami Svaman Yad Agatam Ayatika Yo Ranam Dadata Dana Bya Pun Yatmana Hor Migdaya Yatha Yugyata Datum Yaka Mahagnanin Durgatim Madbya Katham Tasham Aste Vipakata Evam Kila Yatat Kurute Tasma'e Nedane Prasadad Anem Prasadad Anam Kim Bhavata Yaska Tat Kurute Tasma'eka Yim Bhavati Te Me Brohe. This seems to be very close, far more so than we have any right to expect as a general rule from a Parsi living in India, and only 5 or 6 centuries ago, too late for tradition and too early for close criticism. And, okay, where's this question? What is the reward? Roth has Icht Frog, was die Straf ist. This German rendering of that. And the head of a party seems to have been plotting to introduce a hostile sovereign. And in verse 15, the mention of the evildoer, the Pahlavi translator has ni vid in edo, otherwise nevek in ed, which I much suspect has become confused with ni vid in edo through a clerical blunder. Well, historically we find a lot of these things are intentional, but Naryosang has Lapata. They both refer vinasti to vid, so juste, to give the Latin, followed by most, and Roth refers it to Yasna 31. Der sein Brot nicht findet Ahne Gewalthat an der Hirde. And the Pahlavi translator, not else save, sees the root han in the sense of acquisition, and not from ignorance of the sense given above. In another place he renders vigid men. And Naryosang, towards the end of the verse there, talking about the demon's faith and abjuring it, and maybe renders as follows: Thus I ask thee, what is for him who seizes upon destruction, who provides the sovereignty for the wicked, and commits that evil action, O Lord, from which he does not acquire life, even through a bribe, so meaning, and who is a calamity to the man who acts for herds and men, removing calamities from them. And Roth, when we're talking the holy rule in verse 16, he has der die Herrschaft über Hof, Gau und Land das Rechte zu fordern hat. And the Pahlavi for becoming like thee. You know, you don't literally become a god or something, but Lak Havand, now your song has Tavat Tulio, Roth has Diner Worth. And rendering the Sanskrit, we're talking at the end of the verse, living so he may be. Amneryo sung thus, it improves on the Pahlavi. I ask thee thus, how does thou bestow the sovereignty upon one when he is benefitly wise in the body of him who, through the increase of sanctity, is no opposer of prosperity, and providences are villages, that is with him who is discharging his duty and performing acts of sanctity. He is the teacher's teacher. He does not contend, thine equal, O great wise one, the Lord. Thus he is verily, who is such an action, who is thus thine equal through inactivity. And so, the prevailing of verse 17, possibly Mazio has the sense of Mazista in chapter 50, verse 1. There, the most prevailing seems to be the proper rendering. And literally, righteous believers are the wicked, and then the questioning cease. So there's a, between all that is their comment. So literally, which of the two creeds, the greater does the righteous, does the believing saint, or the wicked opponent believe? And we have